to the Prepared Mind channel. Another board of truth for you. That's right. I had a colleague stop by and visit last week, and he had a lot of good things to say about where we are at as preppers, how we're thinking as preppers, how we're keeping ahead and keeping up with the idea of prepping. And he said, look, those board of truth presentations really do it. And I was really surprised and grateful also that he understood how much time and energy goes into this ridiculous board, right? It's just a board, but there's concepts and ideas all over it, right? And I'm also at some point going to do a video talking about where and how I gather all my information. And the people that I learn from, the information sources, interesting, if you listen to them, they'll tell you where they get all of their information from. So it's not just going to Zero Hedge, right? That's where I can find news articles that show us rising and falling levels of the different factors that go into how I look at shit as hitting the fan, right? And I talk about money, politics, I talk about social dynamics, I talk about terrorism, I talk about secret government cabals, I talk about everything with you guys, and then say, this is what we're going to deal with on a street level, right? So we go micro us to macro in the world, and then back down again, back and forth. I really enjoy doing it. It's a lot of fun because I don't want to be caught off guard. I don't want to be surprised by anything that happens up and down, right? So this board of truth, it does take hours and hours to do, but I think it has a really good effect. You got the audio and the visual, so we can understand more deeply what is happening. And in fact, when I do a board of truth, believe it or not, as I line things out and then I go from conceptualizing in the mind, the prepared mind, to visually representing ideas and concepts, it helps me tremendously to understand the things that I know. So I'm really glad that it helps you as well. Before we get into today's board, I want to thank everybody for the efforts that have gone into making this channel a success. Number one, Patreon. Number two, the remonetization of some of the Prepared Mind videos. People are clicking on them, the advertisements. I guess maybe they're placing good advertisements. So I'm actually seeing, some improvement. We're seeing an improvement also in YouTube subscribers. Now the number goes down, but behind the scenes, there's a lot more new subscribers. So as YouTube removes and flushes out people who haven't been here in a long time, we're adding new subscribers that are more active. So don't let a shrinking subscriber number fool you or let you think, hey man, this prepping thing's going away. You are in the right place to be. And you're doing the right things by clicking, by watching, by subscribing, and by sharing with others the things we talk about here. Let me get rid of that light source so there's no reflection on the board. Okay, so today's board of truth, right? I'm always talking about it, and the conversations I've had with friends lately, they said, talk about it some more. I need to hear more of that and understand more of it. And also, you can share these board of truth videos with friends that have no concept at all of the crap that's coming their way. And they will learn. They're starting to learn. One piece of evidence, one anecdotal piece of evidence that tells me people are starting to learn on the macro, the big population, is the food issue. The food leaving the shelves. Now again, I've talked about the difference between people who buy 1 can of corn and 2 cans of corn, right? If you double what they buy, just the people who like a little bit of corn, that's a 100% increase in the consumption of corn. It's going to wipe shelves out. If the tiniest fraction of people started to prep, it makes a difference on the shelf, and we're seeing it. So your efforts to help people get prepared is going to demonstrate the weakness of the overall system and why we need to be preppers now before it gets bad in the future. So, on to the presentation. I drew a little picture of the globe. Dollars, money makes it go round, right? Money makes the world go round. we need to trade. We need to work and then buy things we need. And the medium of exchange is something we call money. Something we call money. And without it, we can't exchange goods. We can't all do everything we need for ourselves. We rely on each other. It's kind of an eco-socio-dynamic situation where we provide goods and services to each other, and we have a medium of exchange, money. Without that money, a good, solid money, a reliable money, a trustworthy money, right, we start to have problems. That's where we're at today. So let's talk about it. There's factors that we can look at the entire money system. You don't want to call it an economy, call it money. The money system is the economy because everyone relies on each other. So the money is the economy is the money. What is money, right? We all have these big questions, but there's factors, and they are visible and those that are ignored, right? So some people, they pay attention to just one thing, and usually it's because they're invested in it, right? A lot of us pay attention to housing or real estate because we own a home. I don't. I used to. But when you own a home, you're concerned because that you actually consider an asset. In truth, unless it's paid off, it's a debt. But you want to manage that debt by seeing the relative real estate prices as they go up and down. So we pay attention to factors that are important to us. But there is so much more that should be important to us than just one item. But for the most part, people have visible and then they ignore the rest. The government, the mainstream news, they talk about kind of everything, but they really focus on things and then convince us that this is where it's at. Okay? So visible, the Dow and the other indexes like the Russell, the NASDAQ, the S&P, they talk about those all the time. I just use Dow because the Dow is the big boy. It's the old boy on the block, right? And it's what I grew up listening to, the Dow Jones Index today, right? So is the economy good? Is money good right now? Well, currently, the Dow Index is at the peak. It's as high as it's ever been, right? So they'll point to that and say that's good. And in fact, that's what they've been doing since Trump was elected. That's what they were doing back when Obama was president. They pointed to the Dow, to the indexes and said, look, it's high. And since the '08 crash, we've watched it go back up. Way too steep, way too fast, with way too little to support it. But, be that as it may, they turned our economy and money into Dow, and the indexes is your money. And I'm not kidding. You go, how's your retirement? Oh, it's great, man. The Dow is up high. My stock portfolio looks good. I'm going to be rich when I retire. Right? So now, instead of looking at business in America, the industrial manufacturing, agricultural production, the wages and labor relative to the overall economy, now we talk about the economy and the stock market as if a couple of computers in New York City duking it out with each other, trading funds back and forth, as if that's the economy? Nah, that's a reflection of what is happening in the economy, and it's more than just computers, it's everything that's going on. And they're directing all the energy towards the Dow indexes. So this now is our economy, and it's 150% of GDP, way overvalued. So even if it came down 33%, in my opinion, that's not enough. That just makes it even to GDP. And if we have that collapse, if we have that fall, real economic output, known as growth, right? Output and growth. If we have a stock market correction, an economic understanding of reality, the Dow is going to fall, but so is GDP and production and growth, right? So 33% down to be even with real economic productivity, that's not enough. It's got to fall like 80% because the economy, productivity-wise, is going to drop as well. It is because of all the forward funding of the programs that we have. In other words, borrowing and debt spending. But the factors that people see, the Dow is up, right? Now, where are we at and where are we going with these other factors that are always talked about? Interest rates, right? The higher they go, the more it slows down the economy or economic activity. And borrowing, because the higher the interest rates, the more expensive money is to buy or to borrow or to use, whatever concept or phrase you want, right? So currently, right, we're just here, we're 2%, right? Now, if it goes up, it kills the economy. And that's what the Federal Reserve was doing last year, trying to raise it so they could get it high enough and have some fallback move. Well, they came up from about par, even. They came up, and then they stalled, right? Pow, they stalled. And we're looking at it going back down, right? 0% interest and maybe negative. That's kind of where they're talking about going. Now, my question to you is, if they bring it down, what is that going to do to savings? Right? Who is going to save money if you lose value on your money all the time because of interest rates? Right? You know, it doesn't pay, right, to keep cash around. You should be borrowing money if the interest rate's so low and so they're encouraging spending. They're encouraging borrowing to invest in, well, you're supposed to do capital expenditures, you know, new equipment, new production lines, more employees, research and development. You're supposed to do that, but we don't see that, right? There's a reason we're not seeing it also. So what else does the news talk about that says, oh man, the factors into the economy that make the world go round, it's perfect, it's great. Well, the jobs market. Now this is where I've had a laugh for a long time. And many real economists who do their own research, you know, they're saying our unemployment is really high, right? Or our employment is high, unemployment is low. We want a lot of jobs. What does that do? What's it supposed to do? A lot of jobs makes it harder for businesses to hire good labor, good workers. As a result, wages will increase in order to compete with each other to pay for good labor, good workers, and that helps me and you, right? Our wages should be going up. When in truth, right, as unemployment goes down, jobs go up, what is happening right now? Wages are stagnant. So if the job market was as good as they said it was, we would see that reflected in happy workers going, man, my fucking paycheck's awesome. Instead, people have 2, 3 jobs that they're working. In a household, they can have up to 6. You know, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 jobs between the husband and the wife, trying to make ends meet. How does that jive with the idea that it's a tight job market? It doesn't jive. It doesn't jive at all. It makes no sense what they've got going, right? So they make money cheap to buy, and there's a lot of jobs out there, but they're part-time, low-wage jobs. There's no competition, right? They're just making people work extra jobs, keeping them below part-time and full-time status so they don't have to pay benefits. That's what's happened to America. It has been an FU to you. All right, now what else? What else does the mainstream news talk about? What does the average guy on the street think about the economy? Well, you know, if inflation is low, then we're good, right? Inflation needs to be stable. So, inflation, they want to keep around 2%. They like that 2% number. Now, I do not like 2% of my money being stolen from me, 2% of my wealth, 2% of my purchasing power, 2% of my wages, right? If my wages don't go up, or they go up 50 cents, but you're going to take it down $1 with a 2%, right, inflation rate, ouch. Ouch, 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 right? It hurts. So how is this good for us? Well, they lie about the inflation rate because they don't include food and fuel and many other items that we have to have. How about health insurance and inflation there? Nope, don't factor that in. Why not? And there are other items where we go, hey, you know, I can buy a pair of jeans for 20 bucks. And when I went to high school 30 years ago, a pair of jeans was 24 bucks. Price of jeans has gone down. Well, it's because we're getting cheap clothing from across the ocean over where they have slave labor factories. You and I, our cost of jeans and shirts and socks and underwear, and many, many, many of our items come from slave labor in other countries. In other words, everyone in this country, whether you're white, black, brown, yellow, red, pink, nondescript, non-binary color, no matter what color you are in America, you are a slave master. You're a slave master proxy by using another country to produce your goods for you. So everyone who's alive in the United States of America right now needs to get off their freaking social horse of worrying about slavery here when it's going on there for real. Just a little aside. Okay, so the inflation rate, 2%, it's killing us. It's killing us because our wages aren't going up, because the jobs figure is fudged and a farce, right? And the percentage rate, all it does is encourage us to go into debt, right? But we all think we're making money because of the Dow, right? And people who don't have an investment portfolio, their boss has one. That affects them. The company that owns them, right, that they work for, that hires the boss, the company has assets. So even if you're not a stock investor, like I'm not a stock investor, I'm not a 401k holder, I still understand that those indexes affect me because other people with money who hire me need to see that grow, and they believe that's that's the economy. Now, I talked about factors visible and we have ignored. What are the factors that people, if they barely understand this, that the Dow is bullshit, shouldn't be that high, that interest rates are artificially low, that the jobs number is fudged and faked, and that inflation is completely spoofed and actually can be used to prove that everyone here in America is a slave driver. Slavendriver, huh? Okay, so these are the visible. What about the ignored ones? What are the things that are ignored and why? Why does the mainstream not explain? Why do people not understand? Well, it's because it will show you exactly how much trouble we truly are in. Debt. Everyone likes to think, well, you know, I've got a little debt, but everyone else is fine. Nobody is fine. Everybody's in debt. I recommend getting out of it if you can. But the higher debt goes up, right? It's up. People are capped out. They're tapped. From credit cards to mortgages to auto loans to student loans to personal loans to home equity line of credit to borrowing from their buddies. People are at credit cards. They're tapped out. That money, the debt that we all suffer, and it's individuals. It is government organizations from city, county, state, all the way up to the feds, tapped out. In fact, we've got a debt ceiling limit that we're hitting again in the federal government. All they got to do is sign a piece of paper saying, go ahead and spend some more money. What the hell does it matter? And they'll do that. They'll put on a show, make it seem like a crisis. It's bullshit. You can't solve the world's problem with a piece of ink. But that's what they do, and they have done, and they'll continue to do. But debt, how are you going to pay for it? We're slaves here in this country, right? In other countries, they're slaves to the clothing manufacturers and other manufacturers. Here, we're slaves to the bank by going in debt to be slave masters, proxy over poor individuals in other countries. Debt, we need debt to go down, but debt is continuing to go up, 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 up. And it's being ignored. We all know about it. We've all heard about it, but no one really wants to do anything about it. I can't do anything about federal debt spending. I can only control myself, so I do. What else is ignored? The bond market. Bond market is incredibly confusing. The more people buy it, the more people buy stocks, the value goes up. The value goes up on stocks because there's all this competition to buy more. On the bond market, The government says we need $1 trillion, so we're going to sell $1 trillion in bonds. And the more people buy them up, it causes the bond rate to drop. The value of them drops as more people buy. It's incredible. They're like, well, if everyone wants to buy these, then we're going to lower the rates because, people. It's such a good deal. It is so trustworthy of an instrument. But there have been bond defaults. Countries, nations, right? They've defaulted on their bonds. It's a very little understood, extremely confusing. That's why I'll say bonds, T-bills, treasury bills, right? I have all kinds of names for the bond market. And there's not only government bonds, but there are corporate bonds. Now, the problem that I see with the bond market is they're becoming less and less and less attractive, as far as I'm concerned, because of inflation. If you're only going to get 2% on a bond, and inflation is 2%, you're guaranteeing yourself a nothing return. You give your money to the government for 3 years, or 2 years, or 5 years, or 10 years, and you get nothing back. The principal, so you're taking the risk, and you're getting nothing in return. Now, if bonds are right at zero, not negative, not positive, and you're getting a 0% return on a bond, you add in the inflation, which they call 2%, but it's actually 4, 5, and 6%, depending on your income level and what you need to buy to get by on a daily and monthly business, right? It could be higher. But in the bond market, right, if you've got 0% and inflation is average of 4, guess what? You've netted a 4% loss. Congratulations. Right? But they don't want to talk about that. The other part with the bond is bonds indicate economic positioning. Are we in a expanding and growing economy, or are we in a flat, recessing, and depressing economy? The yield curve tells us right now we're heading into a nasty recession. And when you combine other factors like bonds, like the debt, like inflation, jobs, interest rates, and the Dow and other things, you can see that we're heading into a shitstorm, right? Now, and debt is huge because the debt, no matter what the economy is doing, still has to be serviced. Now I want to move to another one that's largely ignored because it's misunderstood. The banks. It's a place we put our money. The banks are rich. Well, the banks are supposed to be rich. The banks are supposed to hold assets on reserve. But they play games. They do trading kind of under the radar. They invest under the radar. They have debt that they carry. This entire derivatives, which people don't understand, and I have a terrible time understanding the complexity of derivatives and all the games that banks play. They play games, and it's interesting. There's a pile of money in the middle of the table, and someone will say something and take some money, and another person will say, buy, 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 sell, sell, sell. But always money is coming out of the pile. Eventually, there's no money left there. There's nothing but debt and a stack of IOUs. And then we have a crisis. Someone says, all right, game's over. You have to go check out at the cash cage, see where we're at. Banks are in trouble. One of the biggest ones that we're hearing about currently is Deutsche Bank. It is the largest European bank, and the European system is the European Union, the EU, and their money is the euro. Now, the counterparty risk to what's held in Europe is held in America, and they hold their own risk, and we hold some of their risk, and they hold some of ours. Everyone does this, well, you take my garbage, and I'll take some of your garbage, and I'll buy some of your stuff, and you buy some of my stuff. But every time the money changes hands, every time someone says, I'll buy or I'll sell, the money, right, they take their share. There is a massive amount of missing money. Debt. Right? We've got a huge banking issue, and it's not talked about. It's ignored. Last time this happened, we started seeing trouble in 2007. Economic slowdown, yield curve inversion, growing debt, increasing employment. Yes, increasing employment before the crash. Increasing Dow before the crash. Interest rates were being dropped because the Federal Reserve was trying to salvage the economy. Inflation was incredible. when you look at houses and cars and other big item purchases. The cost of everything was going up, right? So how could we have a crash the next year? We had Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, Bank of America, Washington Mutual, name your bank. Goldman Sachs was in trouble. JP Morgan had its issues. Wells Fargo had its issues. Some got salvaged, some didn't, some were merged. Right now, they're trying to figure out what to do with Deutsche Bank. No one wants to buy it or merge with it. No one wants to buy its toxic assets. Its nuclear cesspool, if I could be so bold as to borrow an expression from Dave Kranzler. And someone else may have given it to him, who knows. But it's a nuclear cesspool of debt. Right? They call it toxic. Well, how about nuclear, right? So the bank issue. Banks are down. They're in precarious position once again. Now, I've got the biggest arrow on everything. I've got it over on the ignored side of the board. And I've got it on the far end of the ignored side for a reason. And this is growth. This is production. This is wealth increasing. Where are we at? Currently, we aren't way up here at 4 or 5% growth with lots of economic activity and productivity. You know, lots of volume of money changing hands, buying and selling, and then paying taxes. We're not seeing that. We're way down here. We're way down here. Like 1.5%. And I'm sure that number is fudged upwards. And when you factor in other things like what we've got on the board, you could probably make a good case, and a lot of economists have, that we aren't seeing any growth. That in fact we're flat or even negative. That is depressing, recessing downward. Our growth is the economic activity. Our growth comes from taking a product and adding value to it through a manufacturing process by putting in human labor, and that human labor gets paid a wage. And the product is improved, and then it goes to a store, right, and it's sold. And when all that money is kept here in the United States of America, from mining to shipping, right, mining, shipping, improvement or processing or manufacturing, right, and then transported again, and then sold in an American-owned store, and then money, and when everything is kept here, and I'm kind of making a case for self-sufficient nationalist country. Stop sending our money overseas. If everything is kept here, then we benefit on every level, from the mining or raw materials to the manufacturing on and up. We're not seeing that, and that's why our growth is so low. Because of this massive debt, so much of the money gets paid to the central bank. Not your bank, the central bank, which loans fresh air. Oh, United States government, you need $1 trillion? Okay, let me type that in here. You now owe me $1 trillion plus interest. And I'm adding it to your ticket, Uncle Sam. Right? That's what they're doing. They didn't go do anything. They didn't go mine some gold. Anyways, so these are the factors, visible and ignored. Now, there are many solutions that are being proposed, not by me, but proposed by President Trump, by Congress, by the bank meaning the Federal Reserve. They have proposals, ideas, right? They call it their toolbox, and I do laugh out loud every time I hear them say, oh, we got a lot of tools in our toolbox. What the fuck are you talking about, tools in your toolbox? All you do is raise or lower interest rates and print more money. Magic. Another $1 trillion, Uncle Sam. Anytime you want it, we got it ready. You kidding me? Okay, anyways. So propose solutions and the consequences, because everything has a reaction. Right? Action, reaction, cause and effect, consequences. So they're talking about right now, coming up into this month, interest rate, they want to move it down. Now Powell is being poked and prodded and screwed with by President Trump, because Trump wants more interest rates down to make money more inexpensive to borrow. But that just increases the debt. That's but they want to bring it down because they're saying it's going to stimulate the economy. It's going to stimulate. I've been so stimulated, right, that I need to go to a doctor to get my glands checked. They're stimulating us down, right? It's cheaper to borrow money. But what does that do? It punishes savings. People are like, right, because of inflation. You can't keep money in a bank, so you got to do what? Send it to Wall Street or buy something with it. And you go into debt by borrowing more and more money. There's nothing for savings. You're lucky if you can break even, but most people have to borrow now because they're flat broke, right? So the consequence of lower interest rates is it punishes savings. Now, if the government is supposed to have a treasury, like Fort Knox, that's full of gold, that's a reserve, that it says, our debts are good because we've got it right here, we'll pay our debts back, look at our reserves, our savings. As individuals, we should have savings. We should have a savings account, right? Well, my 401k is my savings, John. Really, you've put in $100,000 and you're about to lose anywhere from $50,000 to $80,000 of that in the next stock market crash. That's not a savings account. You're a gambler. You need to go get some therapy, right? You're a compulsive gambler, and you don't even know it. You're an ignorant compulsive gambler. I'm sorry to say. I'm sorry to say. It makes me really upset to know that so many people are gambling and they have no clue that they're doing it. So that's what they're proposing. And Trump is chiding Chairman Chief Goon Powell. He's chiding him. I want it lower, and he doesn't want to. So at the end of the month, they may do nothing, which is going to cause a firestorm of consequences negative. And if he lowers it 25 basis points, 0.25%, there is going to be a firestorm in response. And if he lowers it 50 basis points, it's going to cause a firestorm of consequential responses. Because at every level, there are economists, politicians, businessmen, banks, etc., that want to see what they want. And when they don't get what they want, they're going to respond negatively. As far as I'm concerned, this is not a good program. All you're doing is putting off the inevitable. You're ignoring the true problems in the economy, the true problems, and putting a fix over it, a Band-Aid, right? If you need an amputation of the problems, you don't just put a Band-Aid on it and inject a little bit of antibiotic and hope that, the problem goes away. So what else are they proposing? Quantitative easing, which is more cash. Now, last time they gave the cash to the banks. The banks gave themselves vacations, bonuses, pay raises, and they bought back corporate stock with it. It didn't help the economy. It enriched the rich. In other words, right, more cash equals more U.S. debt because the government, but Treasury said more cash, right? And it caused inflation, which they're hiding. But there's more cash out here and not as much value, right? And they hide it. They hide it overseas, right? They hide it in bank accounts, interest on excess reserve accounts that banks hold. They just hold on to the cash. I remember when they were doing this, but it's a wealth transfer. In other words, that QE is your promise to pay back. You have promised to pay back because you were born in this country. What a benefit. Whatever those idiots in Washington decide to spend, you have promised to pay back with your citizenship. Well, of course, you pay for illegals as well. But you promise to pay back everything those fucking morons do. Pardon my French. Right? So, is QE going to solve our problem? Well, it might temporarily do something. But again, it is bad. It doesn't solve the issues. Now, what else? Government spending. Let's spend more money. Well, that is debt that has to be paid back. Well, the interest rates are lower, so we can afford it. Well, we shouldn't have these low interest rates, and an economy can't operate at this level. Be that as it may, they're prescribing government spending. It's going to create debt. It's going to create inflation. Yep, more money, and it's going to be a transfer of wealth. Why is government spending a transfer of wealth? Because once again, Where are they spending it? Military industrial complex. I listened to President Trump's speech yesterday. He talked about how he spent over $1 trillion making our armed forces, the defense, right? The military, more modern, upgraded, bigger, better, badder, right? Now, when they say we're doing military spending, they're not spending it on the Marines and the soldiers and the Navy, squids. Couldn't help it. Seamen. I can't win, right? We're not spending it on airmen. We're spending it on military industrial contractors that provide the newest equipment, the newest, most gadgeted this, the high-teched that. While our enemies, supposed reputed allies and enemies all at the same time, China, Russia, the EU, etc., are developing countermeasures to this ever-increasing, more and more expensive, more and more technical technology, which is the military-industrial complex. Yeah, we need to do more government spending on that. It'll get money out in the economy and stimulate growth. No, it is another transfer of wealth, right? It's a transfer of wealth. It takes money from the taxpayer and it gives it to massive defense contractors so that we can continue as a nation and an empire with the Anglo, English, and European NATO empire to try and maintain control over the world markets. That's what this is an effort to do. It's an effort to control the rest of the world. Globalism. But it doesn't help us. It enriches the 1%, which is the military-industrial complex, the banking complex, and finance and investment complex, and the political complex. There's a political complex. It's very complex. We'll talk about it later. Anyways, that's what they want to do. They want spending on the military-industrial complex and infrastructure. Infrastructure that has already been funded. Infrastructure that has already been paid for. Infrastructure that has had the funds stolen and taken somewhere else and spent. Whether we're talking about the entitlements and the war on poverty, which hasn't worked. Whether we talk about the wealth transfer, the money transfer, the dollar transfer to the wealthy through all of these spending programs and the tax programs, right? The infrastructure should have been paid for. Our roads, bridges, highways, tunnels, airports, they should be the best in the world, and they're not, because the money has been what is known as misallocated. They allocated it and then they misplaced it, or they misspent it. Yeah, let's wait till something breaks before we fix it. I mean, there's this thing called capital expenditure in the world of business where you're always spending money. You're expending capital in order to continuously improve and maintain what you have. You don't wait until something breaks and then go, I guess we're going to have to go find some money. Well, we don't have it. We already spent it on something else, right? But so government spending is not going to save us. The reason is all of these measures have been tried. They've been tried since '08, and we are not in the best economy ever, based on the real information that's available, not the TV information. The Dow and your jobs and low inflation and cheap money. Go America. That's not, right? We have been employing these, and they started as emergency measures. Massively low interest rates, quantitative easing, and massive new, huge government spending. Huge government spending. Huge government spending. Those were emergency measures designed to improve the system in the economy. Where are we now? Where are we now? We're in the same fucking emergency. It hasn't gotten better. They haven't fixed anything. We now have the everything bubble. It's not just housing, and it's not just some toxic derivative debt. It's even bigger derivative debt because they've had to fund with more money that they've thrown out there. How do they make it available? It ends up in these derivative forward contracts. Bond issuances. I mean, it's incredible. Now there's private companies in the EU that are yielding negative interest rates. In other words, you give a private company money, they give you less back, and you say thank you? Whoa, right? So these are emergency measures. They haven't worked in the past. So what makes you think that now that we have more debt, banks are in worse shape, and lower growth than ever, what makes you think that doing these same exact things are going to fix our economy? They can't. They're emergency measures and they failed. So doing them even bigger is just going to make it worse. So, what are the real solutions? I know a lot of people go, John, you put out all this information. Thank you very much. But you're painting a dire picture. Unfortunately, it's a dire picture because we're in dire straits, dire circumstances. We're in a state of economic emergency that was declared back in 1933. We've been under a system of fiat currency that started as gold-backed, gold reserved, then they shut the gold window. We went to all fiat, massive debt spending in order to forward fund the future in an effort to stimulate real growth, but instead of doing what they should have, they just kept spending more money until they flattened the system. Greed, ignorance, stupidity. So what are the real solutions? I actually put some down here. Now, all of my solutions will cause pain. Right? You got cancer, you got to cut it out. Pain. You got a limb that's broken, you got to cut it off, right? Or put a cast on it if you're lucky and salvage the limb, but you're going to have a limp for a hell of a long time. Pain, pain, and pain. Now, what's important is that what these idiots up here are doing is going to cause massive pain. You've got cancer from QE and low interest rates, and they're going to inject us with more cancer. How's that feel? Did that work? No, you just gave me more cancer, asshole. Right? That's what's going on. So they're giving us more pain also. But with that pain, they give you a little bit of morphine, and you're like, okay, yeah, that's cool for 5 minutes, and then it wears off, and you're in worse pain. That's what they're promising. But it doesn't happen in 5 minutes. It takes 5 years to feel the pain of this idiocy. And we're starting to feel it as the morphine wears off, the drug effect. And a lot of people make this connection between a drug addict and needing drugs and needing more and more drugs to keep that high going until they crash and come off of it. They're talking about our economy, our world the same way. Money makes the world go round. Same thing. They're saying quantitative easing, low interest rates, and government spending, debt spending is a drug that gets business high and gets the people a little bit high and gets the government really high on power. But eventually it stops working and you have to crash. Pain. So the real solutions are here. But guess what? They will not be implemented. But I know what the real solutions are. But they will not be implemented because we do not have a responsible government. We do not have a responsible banking system. We do not have a responsible financing system. We do not have a responsible monetary system. Right? And it's all because people in the Federal Reserve and the top 1% of massive global corporations want to continue this giant Ponzi scheme of borrowing from the future to enrich themselves now. And when it fails, they have their top of the pyramid and they take it with them and they take all their wealth and they go away while the rest of the world crumbles and suffers. Shit hits the fan. You think the rich are going to suffer? Well, even if they lose 25%, they stole 85% of it. Think about it. Yeah, well, we took a loss too. I'm down to 5 yachts. Get out of here, Merv. Right? Yo-yo. Never mind. Not going to start ad hominem attacks on the uber wealthy East Coast rich and aristocracy again. Okay, so what are the solutions? Let's just talk about them briefly. Gold, a gold standard. John, there you go. Gold standard, yes. What is the Federal Reserve charged with? What are they charged with? Keeping interest in line, right? Unemployment at a manageable rate, right? Where a sweet spot, right? No more than 5%, no less than 3%. I guess we don't want everyone working. We need some unemployed people. But the way they manage the books now, right, is incredible. You got 2 jobs? Oh, great. Yeah, you're double employed. That's, and they fudge and factor things. But that's what they've been charged with. They've been, and also the Federal Reserve was charged with maintaining the money supply, right, relative to our country's needs. They haven't done it by taking us off of the gold standard, by doing what they did in the 30s, where they put us on a gold reserve standard. Took us off of 100% gold to 40%. Right? Then they went and put us on the fiat standard, or the petrodollar standard. And what have we seen? In the last 100 years, we've seen 98 to 99%, depending on who you're talking to, of the purchasing power of the dollar has gone away. The reason I say it's greater than 99% is the purchasing power of the dollar is low. Because if you take what we're getting, all of you proxy slave masters buying your cheap junk from China, right, that's the reason your dollar still has such good purchasing power, is it's done off of the sweat of people in third world countries and slave labor in China. That's the only reason the dollar purchases so much. Our televisions, our toasters, our appliances. Our standard of living is higher. Our dollar purchases more because of their cheapness. If everything we bought was manufactured in the United States, from mining to transporting to processing and production, right, to assembly, to transporting to retail, to sales, it would be more expensive. So your dollar would purchase a lot less than it does now. Remember that. How much does your dollar purchase? So a gold standard, it would be uniform. You wouldn't lose 2% annually, or 4%, or 6%. And when the government fucks up, you wouldn't lose 12%. When the Federal Reserve lies and screws around and banks collapse, and you lose 15% of the value of your currency because now there's inflation, because they're going to print a bunch of cash and do helicopter money and send you a check. And everyone gets a universal basic income, which is another check. It's going to be means tested to make sure everyone's equally poor. Oh yeah, it's coming. Thank you, Mark Zuckerberg, for introducing the concept through a private corporation called Facebook of universal basic income. And thank you for coming up with your very own crypto token currency, the Libra. Thank you, private corporation that was funded by the CIA. Thank you. Okay, so the gold standard. Hey, $1 is this much gold. $1 is this much silver. And it never changes. So what's a loaf of bread cost? What's a pound of beef cost? What's a can of corn cost? What does a car cost based on a solid, unchanging standard? Instead of a, well, we're going to need a little more currency out here, so we're going to float some bullshit along, and we're going to lower some interest rates. Gold would fix all of the problems that the Federal Reserve has created, but it would be painful to make the change. Also, how about no deficits? Hey, Uncle Sam, quit spending my fucking money. You can only spend what you take in the same way I do, right? No more deficit spending. What? Yeah, our nation is going into debt. George Bush was elected in 2000. The national debt at that time was $1 trillion. Right? It doubled by the end of his 8 years. Right? It went up to $4 trillion. And then it went up to 8. And now we're up to over 20 trillion after Obama's administration. And now Trump is going into debt even faster. Deficit spending, no more. No more forward funding everything by spending money and transferring it to the wealthy. Right? But if we stop deficit spending, there'd be a money circulation issue. Oh my God, how about that? Right? Who is that going to affect? Well, I don't have any money, it doesn't hurt me, but it would cause pain. It would cause pain throughout the economy. But we're going to have pain anyway. Why not do it the right way? No, fuck that. The rich want to keep getting richer. And by rich, I don't mean your uncle who makes $300,000 or your dad who makes $1 million a year. That's not rich. Right? That's for us to consume, this concept of that's rich, that's not rich. Right? That's just making a good living. Now, what else? Domestic manufacturing. We need corporations in America that are American-owned that keep the money in America. from mining and agriculture and transport and processing and refining and assembly, right? Everything needs to be done here so that the money stays here, so that we put our people to work here, so that the unemployment rate is an actual 3% unemployment. Not me working 2 or 3 jobs and counting as 3 independent people, right? So that the other 2 that are out of work, the inflation number is much bigger, but people are like, fuck it, I quit. I'm going to collect some unemployment, right? Going to make no money. Domestic manufacturing. In other words, the reindustrialization of America. Whatever we need for us, we need to make for ourselves. Stop buying cheap shit elsewhere and giving them our money. Right? And it's just foreign corporations who pay their people peanuts. And they make a bigger profit, corporations do, overseas manufacturing cheap junk for us. Domestic manufacturing, put America to work. What else? Cut government jobs. That's right. Not only do we have low unemployment according to their figures, we have massive government employment. They produce nothing. They tax. That costs us money out of the economy. They regulate. That makes doing business here harder. Now, I understand there's good regulations and there's a lot of bullshit, right? They tax, they regulate, they fine, right? They do everything they can, the government workers, to justify the existence of their job. So how many government employees are there between city, county, state, and federal government? And how about private businesses that help the regulatory agencies take money from us? They're not producing anything. Producing is produce. Yeah, like vegetables and fruits. Producing something is like mining and taking something out of the earth and making it into something better. That is production. That's producing. Government doesn't produce, government costs and take. Entitlement programs don't produce anything. They cost and they take. We need to cut government jobs, cut regulation, cut bureaucracy in half. Day one, cut it in half. Big pain. Big pain. Number 5, how about if we de-war? All we have to do is tell our enemies, you fuck with us, we nuke you. We'll have a smaller Marines, smaller Army, smaller Navy. Smarter Navy, smarter Marines, smarter Army. More killing power per person. Yeah, we've got enough technology. We can do lots of killing. We can do lots of intimidating. We don't need to spend what we spend to do it. People, that's unpatriotic to talk about cutting the military. No, I'm talking about cutting the military spending. We've been protecting Europe through NATO by overspending, which stimulates the fuck out of the military-industrial contractors, but doesn't help me and you. And now Trump is saying, hey, Europe and NATO, protect yourselves, you bastards. Well, how come they're protecting themselves more now, and we're still spending even more on the military-industrial complex? Meanwhile, Russia's created the S-400 missile system, which is scaring the living shit out of the military-industrial contractors. At some point, technology should make everyone else's military obsolete. Technology should make us obsolete to ourselves. Right? At some point it'll happen where they go, it's pointless. Why are we doing this? That would be nice, huh? We need to de-war the world. We need to de-war our economy. Number 6 is taxes. I'm not talking about just tax cuts. If we stop spending on war, government jobs, start doing domestic manufacturing so our wealth isn't exported, if we stop deficit spending and we go on a gold standard, guess what? We can cut taxes. More of your own money can go to things that you want and you need for you, which would stimulate the economy because you'd have more of your own money to spend where you want. And the government would quit taking your money and spending it elsewhere where you never see a return. That's the difference. But to do that would be massive pain, and it would cost the rich people all of their money. Well, they wouldn't continue to make money the way they do now. They would have to be satisfied with making, a cool 50 million instead of 100 million. a cool 200 million instead of $1 billion. Oh, I'm sorry for your loss, you bunch of pricks. But wouldn't it be nice if our country could be great again by doing the things I just suggested? Gold standard, cut government jobs, de-war, no deficit spending, domestic manufacturing and production, and cutting our taxes so that we increase our wealth as individuals as well as the national treasury, right? How about that? It would be incredibly painful to make this switch, but we're going into incredibly painful times because of everything we've talked about here, everything we've talked about, right? The answers are easy. The work is the hard part. Shit is going to hit the fan because all they've done is kick the can down the road. And they're talking about kicking it harder and farther and faster than they ever have in the next go-round. That's why you need to be prepared. Food, water, shelter, clothing, medicine, means of self-defense. Having a plan and understanding they are going to jack the system up. They're going to jack it up. What they have going is unsustainable. It's unsustainable by the taxpayer. It's unsustainable by the economy. Right? They've jacked it up. They've jacked it up. Anyways, this money makes it go around, and this is what goes around in my head all day long. This and much more information that I'm more than willing to share with you guys. So I want to thank you for being participants in the Prepared Mind Network with me, and we'll continue to do this. Until then, once again, thank you for your donations, your sponsorship, your activity, your efforts, and thank you for clicking like and share, and I want to see more. Thank you for your comments, for helping others. You know, it's just down to us now. It's our understanding of what's going on and our preparation for what's coming. Chance favors the prepared mind is yours. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.